Hello everybody, welcome to TV Vision. Today we're talking about DC and Marvel copycats. Well, more likely, which one is my favorite? Which one do I think is the best? Well, let's find out. First up is Mr. Fantastic versus Elongated Man. You're probably like, who the hell's Elongated Man? Well, he's DC's version of Mr. Fantastic, stretchy powers and all. He predates Mr. Fantastic by 1 year. But no one really cares because who gives a shit about Elongated Man? Now, in this regard, it's going to go to Mr. Fantastic because I couldn't tell you a single thing about Elongated Man. However, both of them are nowhere near close to being the first elastic superhero, because that goes to Plastic Man, who predates both those two characters by 20 years, debuting in 1941. He was not originally owned by DC, that's why they have two stretchy power heroes. But I guess they decided to ditch Elongated Man when they got the more famous version of the Plastic Man, whatever you call it. It's a very strange power. Definitely does not adapt well to live action, but it's pretty funny. This one's not really even the debate. Catwoman vs. Black Cat. One debuted in 1940, and one debuted in 1979. And one's an obvious ripoff. Black Cat, I like Spider-Man, but you're just a ripoff of Catwoman. You can't beat the original, the OG. Catwoman's better than Black Cat in pretty much every way, and it's kind of strange for them to even just copy so directly a character. I guess she doesn't have a whip, and it's sort of different, but the main role and relationship to the main hero is so similar that it just seems, well, very plagiarizing, especially since there's a big year gap. It's not like, oh, we're creating something around the same time. No, these characters are created so long apart that this was deliberate. Marvel comics do better. Black Cat's not a bad character, but she is an obvious ripoff of Catwoman. Next up, we got Hawkeye versus Green Arrow. Green Arrow debuted in 1941, while Hawkeye debuted in 1964. So, what do you think? Who's the older character? Well, Green Arrow. Who's the better character? Green Arrow. Who looks cooler? Green Arrow. Sorry, I'm actually, so far DC's winning, which is shocking since I'm a bigger Marvel guy. But yeah, Hawkeye's easily one of my least favorite Marvel characters. He just kind of sucks, and his costume looks like crap. And the movie's adaptation didn't help him at all. They gave him nothing. He even has his own show, and that sucked. He was barely in it. They cut out his backstory. What the hell? Green Arrow, on the other hand, he's a cooler guy. I mean, he actually makes wielding a bow and arrow in the universe where Superman exists makes sense, which is a pretty good, which is saying a lot. Like, Black Widow works better in Marvel, and she has no powers, really. But Hawkeye, he has a bow, I guess. He shoots an AntMan arrow at one point. Sorry, I'm not a big Hawkeye guy. Sorry, I don't get him. He's purple, really? I've seen him red and seen him in different things, and I don't get the character. Green Arrow, I get him instantly. Like, oh yeah, this guy makes sense. But Hawkeye takes the same thing and doesn't makes it make less sense. So I don't know. Here's one of the copycats that has definitely grown more interest due to these characters' more relevancy. This is Darkseid versus Thanos. Darkseid debuted in 1971 in a Jimmy Olsen comic of all things, and Thanos debuted in 1973 in an Iron Man comic. 2 years difference. But why are these guys so similar? The one of the biggest villains of their universe, Darkseid being, I think, pretty much the biggest universe in DC. Thanos in the MCU is, but there is debatable there between some other Marvel characters. So these guys are very similar in their conquests. They do it in different ways, but they still have very similar designs. That's because Darkseid was created by Marvel Legends Jack Kirby when he was at DC Comics. And someone at Marvel was like, hey, Jack Kirby created all these characters, so we just might as well steal his, right? So they did Thanos, which is pretty stupid, but, you know, they made Darkseid purple. This is one of those debates. Who's better? Well, in the comics, in animated universes, it's Darkseid by a landslide. He's a lot more of a bigger threat. He's got tons of unique armies. He seems like almost an unstoppable threat for the DC universe, but they end up finding a way to defeat him. He's like the ultimate bad guy, and it's pretty interesting. Thanos in the comics sucks. However, in the movies, Darkseid was cut from Justice League theatrical, which is hilarious, and he was in the Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I watched, and like, this is boring, so I didn't finish it. Sorry, I'm not a Zack Snyder fan. However, Thanos in the movies is pretty good. They actually affects his character to make him more of a, you kind of understand where he's coming from, even if he is a character who is deeply misguided. So, I don't know, it's kind of hard. Darkseid obviously has those cool Omega beams coming out of his eyes. I believe that's what they're called. I might forget, sorry. And Thanos has his Infinity Gauntlet. This is a toss-up. I might just go... I don't know what to pick. I'm going to go with Darkseid since he is the original, and he was a Jack Kirby original creation. He can't go against the King of Comics. Next up, we got the two mercenaries who wield double swords and lots of ammunition. Deadpool versus Deathstroke. Deathstroke debuted in 1980 in the New Teen Titans number 2, while Deadpool debuted in 1991 in the New Mutants number whatever, I forget what issue it was. These characters start off very similar, but of course they deviate over time. Deadpool was initially created as a villain, very similar to Deathstroke, but over time became a more comedic, fourth-wall-breaking character, very unique compared to Deathstroke, who is more serious and who is an older character, not just in creation date, but actual as a person, and a lot more menacing because of that. So it's really very different characters. So it's really up to you what you prefer. Sometimes I've heard. Overall, I probably prefer Deadpool because there's a lot more going on, I feel like, with that character when it comes to the kind of fun media that's unique, which has been copied by other heroes. However, I love Deathstroke as a villain, and if we're going for like one specific adaptation of the character, Deathstroke just slayed in the 2003 Teen Titans show is one of my favorite villains of all time. I love the 2003 Teen Titans show. However, in general, I think I like Deadpool in more things, because Deathstroke has been misrepresented in some other things, but he's one of my favorite DC villains. So it's very hard to decide. This is actually really hard because they're so different characters, but I would have to go with Deadpool. Just overall, I think I had more entertainment with him, even though I think, like I said, the 03 Teen Titans show is so good. Alright, we have another example of Marvel copying DC here. Look at this no-name character that no one remembers. Well, DC's iconic Aquaman. Obviously, Aquaman is the ripoff. Yes, Neymar, the Submariner, I don't even know how to say that right, debuted in 1939 in the Motion Comic Funnies Weekly, which was never actually published, so his first publication was actually Marvel Comics number 1 from 1939, the first ever Marvel comic, and Aquaman debuted in 1941, and as a backup character. And this is going to Neymar. Aquaman is not my favorite DC character. I think he's goofy in the worst way possible. I think the orange and green costume is just odd. It doesn't look right. They try to make him badass, but overall he's kind of eh. Everything that he was trying to do, Neymar already did it way more interesting. His backstory is kind of being an anti-hero from a group of Atlantis. They're very similar, both underwater, half men, half Atlantean creatures, but Neymar does it all better. He's a more brooding character. It's not that Darker's better, but I like Goofy a lot, but Aquaman, I don't know, the orange and green just do not go good together. As it works for Halloween, but doesn't work for underwater, so that's why I choose Neymar, and that's pretty much the main reason. So far, DC's coming out on top, and they're going to come out on top again, because this is Flash for the Quicksilver. It's not even discussion. Not only is Flash would beat him in a race, but Flash is just a more interesting character, better design, and Quicksilver just kind of sucks, I'll be honest. He was good in the X-Men movies, and that's about it. But yeah, there's a lot of characters with super speed, so it's not like we need a dedicated one in Marvel. In fact, they already had an older one called the Wizard. But the Flash used the original speedster from the 1940s. Quicksilver was introduced in 1964. So yeah. Next, we have Bumblebee versus Wasp. Very similar characters, both female characters who dress up like bees, fly around, and have stinger projectiles. But one came first, which is the Wasp, who debuted in 1964. Well, Bumblebee debuted in 1967, I believe. 1967, no, 76. Something, late 70s. So yeah, Wasp, she's the ripoff. I've only really seen the character in the 2003 Teen Titans show, which wasn't for a lot of episodes. Not a bad character, but the Wasp is the original, and we see the cartoon versions here. I'll take the Earth Mightiest Heroes. That Wasp is great in that show. And yeah, I'd never think I would say anything is better than the 2003 Teen Titans show, but because I love that show. I would marry if I could. That's a dumb joke. But yeah, Wasp wins. Next up, we have two guys who like to shrink themselves down. Ant-Man versus the Atom. The Atom debuted a year before Ant-Man in 1961, while Ant-Man debuted in 1962. So they're very similar characters, and they may or may not have ripped each other off. Ant-Man debuted in kind of a weird comic where he wasn't a superhero yet. They kind of call this character superhero later on. So yeah, one of those situations. Though Ant-Man's still a little bit more interesting. I don't really know that much about the Atom, but Ant-Man has ants going on, which makes him a little bit more interesting. Plus, he got the Wasp as a side bitch, so we'll give it to Ant-Man. I barely know anything about this DC counterpart, and I just saw it in this list. So, Captain America versus the Guardian. Guardian apparently debuted like a couple years after Captain America. Captain America wins. I don't like what do you want me to say. However, there is actually another character that's very similar to Captain America that I would like to discuss. A year before Captain America debuted in 1941, in 1940, a character called the Shield, who was a guy who dressed up as an American spandex, who also had a shield motif. He didn't actually carry a shield, his body was a shield, also debuted. So, yeah, very similar characters. Might be more of a coincidence than anything, since, Captain America actually uses a shield, but it's very neat. This character was owned by Archie Comics, believe it or not, and the Archie character actually debuted in the Shield comics, and then later on the Shield would prop up the random redhead kid who couldn't decide which girl he wanted to date, which is kind of B, but there's some history for you. Here's a character I never heard about. This is Imperiax from DC and Galactus from Marvel. This one isn't much debate since I don't really know the guy on the left that much, and apparently he debuted in 2000, which is the year I was born. Fun fact. But Galactus debuted all the way back in the 1960s, so Galactus wins, plus I know more about him, and I like purple. Alright, here's one where I actually don't know the Marvel one, which is kind of rare. This is Deathlock versus Cyborg. Deathlock debuted in the 70s, while Cyborg debuted in the 80s. I don't really know much about Deathlock, but having a cyborg person isn't really that unique. But they do seem like they have a kind of similar motif going on there. However, since I don't really know much about Deathlock, he might be a better character, I don't know. I gotta go Cyborg, because, well, I already said this for a Deathstroke, but 2003 Teen Titans show. Go watch it. Alright, this is the last one of the video, because, well, this is going on for a little longer than I thought. There's probably more copycats I could choose from, but I think there's a good amount. Now we go on one of the most weird copycats, Man-Thing versus Swamp Thing. These characters debuted in the same year, 1 month apart, in the 1970s, which is crazy. Who came first? Well, Man-Thing came first in May of 1971, while Swamp Thing came like a month later in June 1971. That's insane. Yeah, these both are swamp creature, man. Like, I don't even know, really. Swamp Thing wins, which basically, I feel like at this point, DC won this competition. So, congratulations, DC. You won the competition. You get, I don't know, a thumbs up. I gave you money, I guess, by buying some of your merchandise in the past. So, that's what you can get from me. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more crazy videos like this. Some of them will be better than this, though.